Well, offhand, son, I'd say you have got a problem.
Yeah.
Ha ha. But at least you're honest. The revolution can use a man like you.
Hey.
Hop on.
Okay. Hello there.
Hi.
Cartoons weren't just for Saturday mornings in the 1970s. Across that turbulent decade, animators pushed beyond talking animals and cheerful musicals to tackle many controversial topics. From underground American studios to daring European art houses and Japan's psychedelic scene, filmmakers shattered taboos and drew the wrath of censors on nearly every continent. Here are 11 controversial animated movies of the 1970s that were banned. Let's get started. Number 11. Leonardo's Diary. Completed in 1972, Jan Schwankmayer's Leonardo's Diary, a black and white cutout short, offers no straightforward narrative. Instead, Schwankmayer assembles a visual journal that draws on sketches and mechanical inventions from Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks, interlacing them with contemporary images of crowds, marching soldiers, and bureaucratic rituals. Gears turn endlessly, human figures move like clockwork, and drawings of fantastical machines merge with scenes of modern industry. The result is a dreamlike meditation on creativity and control, suggesting that the same inventive genius that builds flying machines can also construct systems of oppression. The film's structure mirrors a diary. Fragments of ideas, sudden jumps in time, and quick juxtapositions of past and present. Schwankmayer avoids dialogue, letting sound effects and music carry the rhythm. The interplay of Renaissance sketches with stark modern footage highlights how human imagination can be twisted by authoritarian power. Czechoslovakia, in the early 1970s, was still reeling from the 1968 Prague Spring and the subsequent Soviet-led invasion that crushed the country's brief period of liberalization. The new normalization government tightened control over art, media, and political expression. In that climate, even an abstract film could be read as a challenge. Cultural officials reportedly viewed Leonardo's Diary as subversive because it suggested that individual creativity, and by extension free thought, was being mechanized and suppressed. The absence of a clear narrative made the message harder to dilute or censor through simple edits, so authorities opted to shelve it entirely. Although the short circulated quietly among international festivals, years later, it never gained the popular notoriety of Schwankmayer's later features. Yet its suppression illustrates the nervousness of a regime that feared symbolism as much as open protest. This was in no way notorious, but as we move down the list, things get more and more twisted. Number 10. Allegro non troppo. Released in 1976, Bruno Bozzetto's Allegro non troppo is a dazzling and mischievous Italian riff on Disney's Fantasia. Like its famous predecessor, the film pairs segments of classical music with inventive animation, but Bozzetto twists the formula into sly social commentary and adult humor. The animated sequences are strikingly varied in style and mood. One of the best known is set to Ravel's Bolero, portraying the evolution of life from a drop of liquid to a frenetic industrial society that ultimately collapses. Another, scored to Debussy's Prelude à l'après-midi d'un faune, follows a lovesick satyr in a lush, faintly erotic forest. Sibelius's Valse Triste offers a haunting meditation on memory and loss as a ghostly cat roams the ruins of its former home. Each segment mixes visual wit with pointed observations about human folly, technology, and desire, often using caricature and gentle mockery to undercut lofty musical associations. While audiences and critics outside Italy largely embraced the film's sophistication, its irreverent streak provoked controversy in more conservative circles. Some Catholic groups objected to nudity and the sensual treatment of mythological figures, particularly the satyr sequence, which they saw as bordering on the obscene. The live-action framing, with its farcical depiction of an overbearing producer and a hapless animator, also included moments of risque humor that clashed with expectations of family entertainment. In several Italian regions, and parts of Spain, local boards briefly restricted screenings or demanded minor cuts. Despite these scattered bans and edits, Allegro non troppo quickly gained international acclaim as a witty, adult-minded counterpoint to Disney's classic. Number 9. Fantastic Planet. René Laloux's La Planète Sauvage, or Fantastic Planet, released in 1973, is a mesmerizing work of science fiction animation that blends surreal visuals with pointed social allegory. Adapted from Stefan Wool's novel Hommes en Série, the film unfolds on the distant planet Egum, where a race of towering blue humanoids known as the Drags keep tiny human-like creatures, the Hommes, as pets or pests. The story follows an Homme named Ter who escapes captivity, learns the Drags' language and knowledge, and eventually leads his fellow Hommes in a struggle for dignity and coexistence. The film's distinctive cutout animation style, created with Czech artist Roland Topor, gives every scene a dreamlike, unsettling quality. Landscapes teem with bizarre flora and fauna, plants that hiss, animals that sprout from the ground, and mechanical devices that blur the line between the organic and the artificial. Beneath this psychedelic surface lies a clear message about oppression and resistance. The Drags' casual domination of the Hommes mirrors the way powerful nations treat marginalized peoples, while Ter's education-driven rebellion highlights the value of knowledge and solidarity as tools of liberation. When Fantastic Planet premiered, Europe was experiencing political tension, and its themes resonated sharply in Czechoslovakia. The country had undergone the 1968 Prague Spring, a brief period of liberalization crushed by a Soviet-led invasion, and was now under a rigid normalization regime. Czech co-producers and animators helped realize the film, yet authorities quickly recognized its parallels to their own situation. The Drags' authoritarian control and the Hommes' fight for autonomy could easily be read as a metaphor for Soviet dominance and the Czech people's suppressed hopes for freedom. Fearing that audiences would interpret it as a call to resistance, the Czechoslovak government briefly banned the film and restricted local screenings. Despite, or perhaps because of, this suppression, Fantastic Planet gained traction abroad, winning the Special Jury Prize at the 1973 Cannes Film Festival and becoming an art house hit across Europe and North America. Well, there's a lot more from where that came. Number 8. Cleopatra, released in Japan in 1970 and sometimes subtitled Queen of Sex in overseas markets, Osamu Tezuka's Cleopatra is a wildly imaginative blend of science fiction, historical drama, and erotic parody. Part of Tezuka's experimental Animorama trilogy, it abandons the wholesome tone of his beloved Astro Boy in favor of adult themes and visual extravagance. The film begins in a distant future where Earth is threatened by alien invaders. To uncover a critical secret hidden in the past, 3 humans undergo a form of time travel that reincarnates them in ancient Egypt. One traveler becomes Cleopatra herself, allowing the story to fuse cosmic intrigue with the legendary queen's turbulent life. Tezuka mixes traditional cell animation with pop art flourishes, collage, and psychedelic sequences reminiscent of 1960s counterculture cinema. Cleopatra is portrayed as a striking, sensual figure whose allure exerts a near-supernatural influence on the men around her, including Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. It was precisely this erotic experimentation that brought the film into conflict with censors. While Japan, in the early 1970s, had a thriving underground art scene, mainstream cinema was still subject to strict obscenity standards. Cleopatra's playful depictions of intimacy exceeded what many local boards were prepared to permit in animated form. Some Japanese theaters trimmed explicit frames, and international distributors marketed it provocatively, retitling it Cleopatra, Queen of Sex, to capitalize on its risque reputation, which led to bans or heavy edits in several Asian countries and in more conservative markets abroad. Although it never achieved the worldwide fame of later adult-oriented anime, Cleopatra remains a fascinating artifact of its era. It showcases Tezuka's restless creativity and his willingness to challenge expectations about what animation could portray. Number 7. 1001 Nights First. Released in Japan in 1969 and circulating internationally in the early 1970s, Osamu Tezuka's 1001 Nights is a riotous freeform reimagining of the classic Arabian 1001 Nights tales. Conceived as the first installment of Tezuka's experimental Animarama trilogy, it mixes Middle Eastern legend with modern pop art, jazz-infused music, and the director's unmistakable visual wit. Rather than faithfully adapt the well-known stories of Scheherazade, Tezuka creates an entirely new narrative centered on Aladdin, turning the familiar hero into a roguish adventurer whose escapades carry him across deserts, bustling cities, and otherworldly dreamscapes. The film unfolds as a whirlwind of color and style. Aladdin's pursuit of wealth and romance leads him into encounters with seductive courtesans, corrupt rulers, and magical beings, each rendered in sequences that veer from slapstick comedy to surreal psychedelia. Tezuka experiments constantly with visual form, switching from traditional cell animation to collage, abstract patterns, and kaleidoscopic montages. Musical numbers and erotic imagery punctuate the story, while sly anachronisms such as airplanes, neon signs, and modern slang reflect the film's gleeful disregard for historical realism. It was that sensuality that unsettled censors when the film began screening abroad in the early 1970s. Though never pornographic, 1001 Nights features frequent nudity, suggestive humor, and boldly erotic character designs. Several Middle Eastern countries objected to the irreverent treatment of Islamic and Arabian motifs, while some European markets demanded cuts to scenes of topless dances and romantic interludes before granting theatrical release. Even in Japan, where experimental adult animation had a small but growing audience, the film's open celebration of sexuality was provocative for mainstream theaters. Despite these hurdles, 1001 Nights found an enthusiastic niche audience and remains a landmark in adult animation. Number 6. Belladonna of Sadness. Ichi Yamamoto's Belladonna of Sadness is one of the most visually striking and provocative animated films of the 1970s. Produced by Mushi Production, the studio founded by Osamu Tezuka, the film draws inspiration from Jules Michelet's 19th-century history La Sorcière, which explored witchcraft as a metaphor for female rebellion. Set in medieval France, the story follows Jeanne, a young peasant woman whose wedding night becomes a nightmare when she is assaulted by the local baron and his men. Cast out and humiliated, Jeanne enters a pact with a devilish spirit that gradually empowers her with magical abilities. As she embraces her newfound strength, she becomes both a healer and a feared witch. She then leads a popular uprising against the oppressive feudal order. Instead of conventional cell animation, the film unfolds as a series of richly painted still images, watercolor tableaus, and slow pans across elaborate illustrations. Bursts of color and psychedelic flourishes punctuate the narrative, echoing the era's countercultural art and music. The combination of delicate, almost Art Nouveau aesthetics with explicit depictions of sexuality creates a haunting tension. Beauty and brutality coexist in every frame. The soundtrack, a blend of folk and avant-garde rock, deepens the film's hypnotic atmosphere. Its content, however, proved too incendiary for many audiences and censors. Japanese authorities were uneasy with its explicit scenes, and after a brief initial run, the film was quickly pulled from major theaters. When distributed abroad, particularly in parts of Europe and the United States, it faced similar resistance. Some countries refused classification, others demanded heavy cuts to scenes of assault and occult imagery. And there's more from where that came. Number 5. Dirty Duck. Released in 1974, Dirty Duck is an unabashedly raunchy counterculture cartoon that pushed the envelope even by the permissive standards of the 1970s underground scene. Produced by exploitation film impresario Roger Corman and directed by Charles Swenson, the film takes its cue from the adult animation boom sparked by Ralph Bakshi's Fritz the Cat, but gleefully lowers the bar on taste and budget to create something closer to a psychedelic midnight movie prank than a polished feature. The story follows Willard Eisenbaum, a meek insurance claims adjuster whose dull life takes a surreal turn after he meets Dirty Duck, a wisecracking, lewd, anthropomorphic fowl. Acting as both devilish guide and chaotic sidekick, the Duck drags Willard through a series of vignettes packed with explicit sexual escapades, hallucinations fueled by controlled substances, and crude social satire. Animation styles shift wildly from sequence to sequence, sometimes resembling underground comics, at other times a rough sketchbook. The soundtrack, featuring members of the band Flo and Eddie, matches the film's anarchic spirit with irreverent rock numbers. From the outset, Dirty Duck aimed to shock. It revels in nudity, profanity, and lampooning of religion, politics, and middle-class morality. While clearly a comedy, its non-stop parade of explicit jokes invited obscenity complaints almost everywhere it played. In the United States, local boards in several cities refused to license screenings, effectively banning it in those areas. The British Board of Film Censors denied a certificate altogether, making an official UK release impossible at the time. Even in more permissive markets, theaters often showed heavily edited prints or relegated the film to late-night, adults-only programs. Some dismissed it as a crude cash-in on Fritz the Cat, while others appreciated its brazen, anti-establishment humor and underground comic book energy. Number 4. Heavy Traffic. Ralph Bakshi's Heavy Traffic, released in 1973, is a raw, semi-autobiographical exploration of life in the gritty streets of early 1970s New York. Following the groundbreaking success of Fritz the Cat, Bakshi doubled down on the idea that animation could portray the adult world without compromise. The film blends live action and hand-drawn sequences to tell the story of Michael Corleone, a young underground cartoonist navigating a chaotic world of poverty, violence, and fractured relationships. Michael lives with his volatile Italian father and Jewish mother in a decaying apartment, a setting that mirrors the ethnic and cultural collisions of the city itself. He falls in love with Carol, a black bartender, and their interracial relationship becomes a flashpoint for tension and prejudice. Around them swirl a cast of hustlers, gangsters, escorts, and corrupt cops, each rendered in Bakshi's distinctive, rough-edge style. The narrative jumps between Michael's internal fantasies, where he envisions himself as a powerful comic book hero, and the harsh reality of street life. The film's unflinching portrayal of intimacy, violence, and racial tension was unlike anything audiences expected from animation. Scenes of brutal fights, intimate encounters, and profane dialogue earned it an X rating in the United States. Bakshi uses the medium to amplify the chaos. Psychedelic color shifts, scratchy urban soundscapes, and sudden bursts of surreal imagery heighten the sense of a city teetering on collapse. Censors, however, focused on the explicit surface. Number 3. The 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat. Released in 1974, The 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat picks up the exploits of the world's most notorious animated feline. Produced without the involvement of creator Robert Crumb, the sequel was directed by Robert Taylor and conceived as an episodic journey through a series of alternate realities. Rather than a single storyline, the movie follows Fritz as he lounges on a couch with his wife smoking and reflecting on the different lives he might have lived. Each segment launches him into a new, exaggerated scenario, from political satire to intimate escapade, making the film part anthology, part social lampoon. The vignettes are deliberately outrageous. In one, Fritz becomes an astronaut and inadvertently triggers a nuclear holocaust. In another, he is a Nazi stormtrooper, the sequence rendered as an uncomfortably sharp parody of fascist propaganda. Other episodes tackle American race relations, urban unrest, and the Vietnam War, all laced with explicit, intimate encounters and a caustic sense of humor. The animation style remains rough and exaggerated. The film is rife with nudity, profanity, and political jabs, including depictions of racial stereotypes and blunt commentary on American imperialism. Ratings boards across several countries either refused classification or slapped it with their harshest adult designations. In the United States, it carried an X rating, ensuring limited theatrical play. The British Board of Film Censors demanded cuts to the most explicit material, while some European markets, including parts of Scandinavia and Germany, banned it outright. Number 2. Coonskin. Released in 1975, Ralph Bakshi's Coonskin is one of the most incendiary animated films of its decade, a biting satire of American racism that blended live action and animation to provoke, unsettle, and challenge audiences. The film reimagines African-American folklore heroes Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and Brer Bear as modern hustlers navigating a corrupt, racially charged urban landscape. Their quest to rise from the ghetto to positions of power becomes an allegory for survival and self-determination amid systemic oppression. Intercut with these animated episodes is a live-action framing story in which two black men attempt to break a friend out of prison. Stylistically, Coonskin is pure Bakshi. Rough, vibrant animation layered over grimy backdrops, sudden shifts in tone from bawdy comedy to stark violence, and a soundtrack steeped in blues and soul. The film caricatures figures from every corner of American life: gangsters, corrupt politicians, hypocritical preachers, and racist police, exaggerating stereotypes to the point of grotesque absurdity. Bakshi intended this as a fierce critique of the racist imagery embedded in American culture. Yet the film's confrontational use of racial caricature proved explosive. Censorship silenced this anti-racist masterpiece because people thought it was racist. This next one is even more noteworthy. Number 1. Fritz the Cat. 1972's Fritz the Cat remains the single most infamous animated film of its decade, a cultural flashpoint that upended the notion that cartoons were only for children. Adapted from Robert Crumb's underground comic, Ralph Bakshi's film follows Fritz, a hedonistic college-age cat, as he prowls through New York City in search of physical intimacy, illegal substances, and meaning during the tumultuous counterculture era. Through episodic encounters with militant revolutionaries, disillusioned intellectuals, and disaffected youth, Fritz becomes both a participant in and a parody of the era's radical politics. His journey is laced with explicit intimate escapades, casual nudity, and use of controlled substances, all rendered in brightly colored, traditionally styled animation. Bakshi and his team deliberately contrasted wholesome cartoon aesthetics with a narrative steeped in adult realities, such as racial tension, police brutality, anti-establishment protests, and the era's pervasive sexual liberation. While some critics hailed its boldness and subversive humor, many others saw only provocation. Religious groups, parent organizations, and local censorship boards quickly condemned it. The controversy reached a historic peak when the Motion Picture Association of America awarded Fritz the Cat an X rating, the first time an animated feature had ever received such a classification. The film was banned outright in the United Kingdom, heavily edited in Australia, and subjected to regional bans and censorship throughout Europe, from Norway to West Germany. Some US cities also refused screenings, and police raids disrupted showings where local obscenity laws were strict. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.